Hey, everybody! Welcome to Style Versus. This is Quinn, of course, and today I have the amazing Katherine Llopiz, an amazing clinical licensed therapist, and we're gonna have a bit of a different conversation today because she has an amazing amount of wisdom, perspective, mindset, and I have my own experiences. So we're gonna mash those together and then make a meal out of it so it's palatable so everyone can learn from it. And on that note, Kat, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. And can let the people know where can they find you, what's your name, and how did you even get involved in this whole field?
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Katherine Llopiz. I am a licensed mental health therapist. I am also the owner of Be the Change Mental Health. We are a group practice specializing in all things from trauma, personal development, self-esteem enhancement, and we actually also partner with a couple of community agencies in the foster care system as well.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned foster care, and I know that's a big topic. How are you impacting and encouraging people in the foster care system?
Yeah, so I actually work with an organization called DASH, Dreams and Success Homes Florida, DASH Foundation. And so they are a group home. They have group homes all over the state of Florida.
Wow.
So I act as clinical director for the group homes, and I provide mental health services such as groups. We do coachings. There's just so many ways of being able to impact that community. But the reason why we did it this way specifically was because the foster care community, they are very underserved. It's really, really, really hard to find clinicians, as in therapists, psychiatrists, in general, to be able to service it without having a very extensive long wait list.
Wow.
So where I step in as is through my organization, through Be the Change Mental Health, they don't have to wait. And so they get access to care. So the moment they come into care or come into the homes, we're able to assess them, determine their level of needs, get them services that they need without having to wait 3-4 months out.
Wow. 3 to 4 months?
For mental health services, yes. Oh yeah,
Wow.
Everybody has a wait list.
There's a wait list for
There's
everybody?
a wait list for mental health, absolutely.
Why is that?
Unfortunately, specifically speaking for individuals who are in foster care, they have Medicaid. A lot of providers do not want to accept Medicaid. So they're very limited on the services that they can provide because you're trying to find a provider and none of them take your insurance. That's frustrating. Some people can't afford mental health services. They can't pay $125, $150, $200 for a session.
Wow.
That's a lot. So for me, access to care is very important. I started Be the Change specifically to be able to empower underserved communities, including minorities communities. And so that was one of the things that I came into the mental health field to be able to provide that service and provide a deeper level of care and access to care.
Wow. And that's very important because I don't know when it happened, but mental health has been a huge topic over the past couple of years, and it just popped up. And I remember when I started working on my mental health around like 2014, 2015, there was not really no one to talk to about that. And you're kind of on your own. Mm-hmm. So, and for me, I'm kind of one of those guys anyways where I got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And we're going to hop into how I even started developing my growth plans because I realized at that time, I started photography. Yeah. And if I wanted to get clientele, if I wanted to get around better people, you have to have a certain level of confidence. You have to have the mindset, so on and so on. And at that point, I was pretty lame.
Not lame.
I was there, so I know.
It was just probably really hard for you to find a connection because you might have felt disconnected from yourself at the time. And so for you, it was maybe gaining a deeper level of understanding on who you are and what you've come to be or where you want to be, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And then you came into yourself. It sounds like you found yourself.
You know, and that's a big topic, too, because I remember reading about, like, finding yourself and developing yourself, and you're not lost. You just have to get to a certain point.
Yes.
But what I've realized within my journey was you have to be very intentional and succinct of the outcome you want to have for yourself. So I wanted to be more confident. I wanted to be able to talk to women easier. I wanted to be able to talk to like high-level men easier. I wanted to be able to go into different environments and different activities that people are in.
Absolutely.
And be able just to go talk to them and I'm like, oh, this person has millions of dollars. I can't talk to them.
Right.
And my first program was to develop my style. So a lot of people see me now, they say I'm very stylish, so on and so forth.
Yes.
But I had no swag back then, if you could believe that. So I remember, and this is a very, very just interesting story. I'll go to these events and I'll see guys at the time that I thought they looked pretty cool, they looked interesting. And then I just woke up one day, like, you know what? I want to be fresh. So then that whole week I Googled or I watched videos about men's style and best menswear stuff. So that whole week, I completely changed my wardrobe. I went and bought blazers, dress pants, chinos, new shoes. I bought 5 pairs of shoes that week.
Oh my goodness.
I have 2 of those shoes still to this day. 3 of those shoes still to this day. And over time, I just developed it more and more and more to that what it is now. But the bigger thing behind it is the confidence.
Absolutely.
If you don't have the confidence to wear certain clothes, the clothes will wear you. Mm-hmm. And people could see that.
Yeah. And it won't even matter what you have on or how good you look. If you don't feel good, then none of that matters.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of times we do hide behind the mask, like the makeup, the clothes, the jewelry. We hide behind these things, and really deep down inside, we're hurting. And it hurts to say that, right? It hurts to express to ourselves, so we hide behind these things, these material things, which really have no value. We give it value. But the things that really matter is how do we feel within and how much confidence we have in ourselves and our abilities and our passions and what's in our heart ultimately, right? But it all goes back to our mental health.
Exactly. Can you talk about that a bit more, about the hiding? Because I've seen it all the time. Can you expand about the people that you worked with or you may have come across, or just in passing, that they have all this jewelry, but on the inside, there's no value? Like, how would you talk to someone within that kind of perspective?
So I think the main thing is being able to identify within yourself, how do you feel? Am I using these things as an outlet or as a mask, or do I really just like them? Because a lot of the times, like I said, if we're just hiding behind the clothes and hiding behind the jewelry, we have to be able to look within and say, well, how do I feel today? Do I feel, bad? Do I feel depressed? Do I feel sad? I think it's important for us to wake up every day and check in with ourselves, check in with our mental, check in with our feelings, and check in on your strong friends too. That's just as important. But I think for a lot of people who struggle with low self-esteem or low self-worth, we see it not just in the exterior, but kind of like how you said, when I would walk into rooms, I would feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And it didn't matter that you just bought all these outfits and blazers and chino shoes. Like, none of that probably mattered because you didn't feel it. Yeah. You didn't feel good or safe in those clothes because they were just a shield. They were masking how you really felt inside.
Wow, that's really deep. And well, of course, I've been there too because I had to wait for my confidence to catch up to wear certain things. Like I was on when I was talking to Rich the last time, I bought this beautiful shirt and I got it at PAXN a couple years ago. It has a beautiful texture. It had multiple colors on it. I couldn't wear that shirt because it was too loud for me. Yeah. My confidence wasn't there. Like, because if someone would have actually bought that shirt, I'd have froze like, Someone would have complimented me that I wouldn't know how to receive the compliment because my confidence wasn't there. Yeah. And I think it's really cool, even just with clothes, that you can see how it could affect someone's mood, how it could affect their mind. When it comes to your day-to-day talking to different clients or even friends of yours, have you seen where even items as clothes impacted them in a certain way?
Absolutely. I do think that if you, to an extent, if you dress up and it can make you feel good, but I also believe it's a temporary feeling if we're not working what's underneath the layers. And so we're putting on these layers of clothes and shoes and makeup and whatnot. And really what's underneath the layers is what we really need to sometimes put, well, not sometimes, a lot of times put the focus on.
Yeah.
We need to hyper focus on really the deeper layers of how we feel, how's our mental health, how do we respond to challenges on day to day. And so personally, my mental health journey was one that I had really low self-esteem as a child. You know, I had a lot of feelings of rejection, a lot of feelings of abandonment. Just feelings of low self-worth. I didn't value myself. I didn't give myself the importance that I should have. And so a lot of times when, especially we, just as women and men, right, when we don't value ourselves and we don't give ourselves that self-worth, people see it. You know, they see it. Because we allow people to mistreat us. We allow people to do what they want with us. We allow people to just do things that we otherwise wouldn't have, or that those who do give themselves value would not allow anyone to mistreat them in that way. So when I became a little bit more aware of myself and I gained that level of understanding as to who Kathy is and and coming into my own skin, I was able to reflect and really, really just look in the mirror and just say, girl, you is cute today. Like, we have to do those things, even if in the moment we don't feel it, because of course we have our days where we're just like, I'm not feeling it today. It's being honest with ourselves, but also being able to uplift ourselves during those moments that we really, really, really need it.
Wow. And I love the last part about being honest and just uplifting yourself, because in the beginning, when I was going through, because I didn't have the greatest attitude at that time a couple of years ago, and I was like, woe is me. I was letting external circumstances run my mind, run my emotions. I remember when I fully integrated my emotions, I think it was 2016. I remember I started to cry again. And it was such an interesting feeling because I came from not even experiencing that for years on end.
Wow.
And I got to a point where now, if I see something sad or see something terrible happen, I'm there with that person.
Wow.
We crying together.
Wow.
And this is such a funny story. I was watching a Dragon Ball Z episode. And then I don't know if you know Dragon Ball Z with the characters.
I do.
All right, so Master Roshi, of course you know that's Goku's teacher. Like, he was getting beat up, he was getting hurt, and then they saw him lying on the floor, and he wasn't moving, and everyone's like, Master Roshi, and then Goku's just looking at him. And I'm there with Goku looking at Master Roshi, and I'm here crying.
Aww.
I'm like super tears. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's going on?
Wow.
And it's so cool to experience those feelings now, because if you feel more present, you feel more interactive with whatever your situation is. Another show I watched a couple of weeks ago, it was, oh man, I'm gonna start crying just thinking about it.
That's okay. Feel it.
But this is actually a Chinese anime show called Link Click, and what the brothers do is they're able to look at a picture, and the other brother could go back in time and be the protagonist at whatever point that in time was. So in this episode, the surviving son of an earthquake, he wanted to go back and tell people how he felt, tell his mom how he felt, tell his love interest at the time how he felt.
Wow.
And what was really interesting was they didn't know that they're all were gonna die except the son. And the son wanted to go back to prevent and tell everybody, hey, there's an earthquake coming to get out of there. But what really was interesting at the end of the story, I thought his mom and him were going to make it. But he forgot a bag that had his dad's camera in it. Oh. And his mom, he ran to get it, and then the house fell down. And then when they changed back to the camera, the scene, he was on the floor, he was okay. But his mom's on top of him with her rubble on top of her. I'm like,
oh.
And he wanted to protect his mom, but then that ended up happening again, and it was like, man, I really thought they didn't make it.
Yeah.
It's not happening right now, but I was crying for like 5 minutes.
Oh.
Because I was like, it was, and that's real. That's happening to people right now.
Absolutely.
And it's just so it's so hard to see people that they're not in tune with that side, that emotional side, where like you can feel the pain. You're not
Absolutely.
there, but
Yeah.
the resonance of what's
It's
going on, you
empathy.
can feel it.
It's being empathetic to someone's situation. And, one of the things that you mentioned that really caught my attention was when you said that for a long time, you didn't feel anything. You didn't feel those emotions. And really, it's just us numbing ourselves because, again, sometimes feeling hurts.
Yeah.
And we run away from those pains and we run away from those emotions and we kind of sweep it under the rug. And we do that a lot with our mental health. And we do that a lot with our traumas. And we do it a lot with the shit that we just don't want to deal with. We swipe it under the rug and we think that we're gonna forget about it.
Yeah.
And then it shows up in different ways, like with numbness or just emotionally withdrawing ourselves or disassociation. And so when we look at it, if we look at the relationships around us, the relationships that we keep really have a way of being able to tell us how our mental space is, how our mental health is doing. Because you're going to look at a lot of conflict and you're going to have a lot of chaos. You're not going to have productive relationships because deep down inside, we're struggling. And while we may feel like we're okay, we're not treating people nicely. We're not treating ourselves nicely. And so at some point, we have to really be honest with ourselves and say, you know what, it's time for me to face this head on. And it doesn't feel good to do that, which is why a lot of people have those moments of numbness or disassociation where they don't want to feel anything at all, even if it means, the good thing, the bad things. I don't want to feel because it hurts. It's too much.
Do you feel that that's a quick cop-out that people will use so they don't really face what they have to face at the time? Because, I mean, it's essentially is. But I sometimes I believe that the bigger part is a lot of people don't know how to handle those things.
Yeah.
And, I mean, growing up, if you don't have someone strong in a family emotionally and mentally to do that, it's probably not going to happen unless you take an actual interest in developing that for yourself, / even with the therapy.
Yeah.
So, and what are some experiences have you had with that?
Just with my own family's mental health. I mean, overall, I see it a lot in our communities where we don't have a safe space. We don't have a support system. And for a lot of it's like, nobody wants to hear my shit. Like, that's how we feel. Like, why do I want to complain or tell someone how I'm feeling when I'm struggling if they don't care? And I think a lot of us, we feel that way, but that couldn't be further from the truth. And so when we do have that safe person that we can say, you know what, I'm not okay today. And I know you asked me how I'm doing, and my natural instinct is to say, I'm good. But really, I'm not good today. And I'm going to say I'm not good because saying I'm not okay does not mean that I'm weak. Saying I'm not okay does not mean that I can't get myself up or I can't, experience what I'm going through in a healthy manner. Saying that I'm not okay is just being realistic with ourselves and being realistic with the people that are around us that we consider support systems. And so I think that's a really, really good place to start, being honest with ourselves and saying, you know what, I need help. And I recognize that I've been struggling for a while and I don't want to feel this way anymore. I want to be able to grieve whatever I'm feeling. I want to be able to heal from whatever it is that I'm experiencing. I understand how this has been impacting me, impacting the quality of my life, the quality of my friendships. And I no longer want to feel this way. And so I think just being honest with ourselves, being honest with our social support system, family, friends, I think that's a good place to start.
Wow.
What was it like for you specifically when you went through those moments where you felt disconnected with your feelings? What helped you through those moments?
Well, this is actually an interesting topic for me because I'm very introspective. And when I was a teenager, I'm gonna tell you how it all started. So when I was a teenager, my mom and I didn't have the greatest relationship. And I got to a point where for me to even feel safe living with my mom, I locked my feelings away. So when she would yell at me, I'd be very dismissive. And when she would do all other child rearing things as you were growing up, I had to find a folder for myself in order to be okay, quote unquote okay.
Right.
So I was like that for a very long time until when I started dating. And because of my mom, I had a lot of disdain for women at the time. So I'm like, well, if my mom could treat me this way, what's stopping another woman from treating me this way? So I was very like, why do you like me? I don't.
Right. You didn't trust women in general because you didn't have that foundation at home. Like, how could I trust a woman if the very first woman that I met didn't give me a reason to trust her? I didn't feel safe around her.
Yeah. And that was a big thing for me for at least probably 2 to 3 years before. I was like, well, I guess people do like me for X amount of reason. And I remember I had this conversation like, if I want to have a family one day, if I want to have a partner one day, like I cannot have this mindset against women. Yes. So I started to learn, okay, why did this happen, and why did I start to really feel a woman this way? So my mom and how she treated me, so on and so forth. But the bigger picture was not everyone's going to treat me that way.
Yes.
My mom would treat me this way because that's how she knows how to interact with people and so on and so forth. So I achieved that and I let that go. But my feelings were still locked away. So I remember hearing I had different comments sometimes where it said, Quinn, you're very cold, you're empathetic, you're compassionate. And no, I thought I was. Like I give people flowers, I'll do compliments, so on and so forth. What I believe was missing was that more inner conversation of true compassion, where it's actually, genuine. Wow, I can't believe that happened to you. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
And just actually embracing what the person is going through instead of not having a feeling about whatever they're going through. They're just like, oh, okay, that never happened to me, so I don't know how to
feel. I can't relate.
And that's how it was for a while. And a little bit over 20, when it started in 2014, my initial, started with my style and starting to really learn how to open up a bit more. I started to realize, like, well, how would I unlock my feelings again? How would I get back my feelings again? So this is going to take a bit of a different turn. Yeah. The first time I used magic mushrooms, it changed my perspective about the world. And then from that point forward, I was able to go a little deeper and deeper into what my situation was. And I started a new growth plan of feeling my emotions again. So I went through, like, I watched specific things that were either, it was like very romantic or very scary. And then I started to really, instead of looking at the thing, like, oh, this is lame or whatever, but like, I'm starting to be there with the character. I'm really experiencing what they're going through. I'm looking at what they're looking at. And then I was feeling what they were feeling. And it took maybe 6 or 7 months before I started to get a lot more warmer. And I started to really open up my spiritual side again, because I had locked that away as well. And once I opened those 2 doors, plus really started to get stronger within myself and really learning who I was, then that it really started to open the floodgates even more. And now, I won't say well now, but and at that time I was like, well, I do feel different. I feel lighter. Right. But there's one big event that happened in 2015. I was going to therapy at the time. I'll never forget Nicole. And I was telling Nicole everything about my mom and what happened with my mom. And then Nicole told me to sit and like write a letter to tell my mom how I felt about just about everything. Wow. So I'll never forget, Kat. I'm here at the computer. I'm here typing. There's tears on the keyboard. It was a very big moment. And my girlfriend at the time, she's the one who advised me to go to therapy. And I was one of those guys who were like, I don't want to go to therapy. I'm okay. Yeah. I listened because this is someone who generally cared about me. And I was like, well, okay, let me see what I can do. So the following week, I found a therapist within the network and I went. And I was with Nicole for, I believe like 3 months.
Oh, awesome.
And I put the notion that if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do it lame. I'm going to open up. I'm going to open up. I'm going to have a conversation. I'm not going to be like, I don't want to tell her anything because I'm scared. Like, no, I had to. If I'm going to go to a professional, I'm here to see professional. I got to put in the time. I got to put in the effort. So I did that with Nicole. And God, after I read my mom that letter, it was like a whole weight came off my shoulders. Wow. And my mom still to this day, she still doesn't really doesn't really believe it. It was like a lot of her fault.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the point. The point was for me to release what I
Right.
held on to for those at least 10, 11 years. And I would say from that point forward, everything changed in my life. I became more empathetic. I became more compassionate. I became more caring.
You unpacked that load. You were carrying that weight for so long.
Such a long time.
Yeah.
And after that point, that's the longest I've cried up to that point, other than being a baby. Because when you're a baby, you cry all the time.
That's a good analogy.
And just from that point forward, that's when everything started to cascade. My social skills got better. Well, I bet faster because I was more able to just know what I'm practicing getting better at this, but I'm not holding myself in a
Right.
weird precedent about it. My relationships started to get better over time because then I'm starting to listen to people more. I'm starting to be more active and
Right.
be more present within relationships and really being succinct about intentionally building my relationships as well. And 2016, I ended up, the girlfriend I had at the time, we ended up breaking up. And I dedicated that whole year for a big personal growth run. And I laid so much foundation that year. One of the biggest projects I did for 2016 was I wanted to have a 80% confidence floor. And the notion behind that was I wanted to become stronger socially. I want to develop better
Yes.
relationships. That whole thing where I said I want to go to
Right.
places and not be frozen by whoever does what because of status.
Correct.
I wanted that floor because I see people do that. I go, if they can do that, then I could definitely do that.
Right.
So during 2016, I built the floor, and 2017 to 2018, I practiced on being warmer. I practiced on active listening. I practiced actually talking to women.
Wow.
I practiced strong inner talk. I also practiced, this is a big one, unchaining myself from myself.
I love that.
I always had
Yes.
visions where it was just me. I was like hanging on the wall, and then this big creature was there, and then it's like, you're never gonna get down from there. You're too scared.
Right.
And then that took me at least 6 months to really go through because I was afraid of all the power I had within me
Yes.
that I didn't know what to do. Like how could I manage all that? And then I remember I did a mushroom session, and I remember I went back into that same scene where I'm hanging on the wall, and then the changes disappeared,
Wow.
and I just landed on the floor, and then the creatures looked at me like, you finally did it.
You were strong enough to confront me. You were strong enough to let me go.
Yeah. And after that part, that's where the big influx of my energy came from.
Yes.
And that's where I would say that's where the Quinn that people see now is because I did that.
So would you say that facing your traumas and being able to confront your mom in that letter definitely build that milestone for you to be able to face that demon and unchain those chains from yourself?
Yeah.
But it kind of like how we were discussing earlier, it's about being able to confront those fears, confront the traumas, confront the pain that we've been running away from, because that weight got so heavy to the point where someone recognized it.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, you need to go to therapy. And you listened.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Thank you so much, Kat.
A lot of times, people tell us that I think you need a therapist. But they say it in a way where it doesn't come from love. And I think that's so important for us to do in general is if we see someone that's struggling, come with an empathetic heart, an empathetic stance. Just let them know, hey, I've seen that you're struggling. Maybe you should talk to someone versus you need a therapist. You got to go talk to somebody because something really wrong with you. Like, that's no way of going to therapy. Like, you're not going to get no one to really take what you're saying to heart. They're going to take it the wrong way. They're going to be insulted by the stance that you're telling them go to therapy. So I love the fact that you received it from someone that was genuine and someone that you cared about. I think that made it a lot easier for you to decide to go on that healing journey.
Yeah, and it is a really pioneering moment for me as well, because a lot of times I've always heard people say that if you go to some therapy doesn't work, and you're gonna stay the way you are for the rest of your life, and those are very domineering statements.
Absolutely.
It's very scary to hear those things. But since I've emerged the other end, I know everyone can do it, but a lot of people aren't willing to do it.
Right.
And the key word willingness is huge, because a lot of people are willing to do a lot of things. They're willing to hop in a relationship. They're willing to go do whatever. But when it comes to the willingness of self and to heal yourself, it's almost non-existent.
Right.
So, and I know you see this almost all the time, where what's the biggest excuse you get from people that they're just not willing to do it?
So I get people, and this is what amazes me the most, when people come to therapy, a lot of times it has nothing to do with, I want to work on myself. It's my relationships are struggling, and so now I'm forced to work on myself. And so this is why I do believe that our relationships serve the purpose of being like mirrors to our souls, because the ones that you keep, if you can kind of see what you're struggling with. If your relationships are mostly toxic and there's nothing but conflicts or disagreement, I got to look within myself. I can't always point the finger. Yeah. If my romantic relationship, my friendships, I'm struggling in all those areas, I'm struggling in my professional life, at some point I got to stop pointing the finger, and I have to look within. And I have to be able to say, you know what, it's time for me to do something for me, because I'm recognizing that I'm really struggling. And I know it can't just be them. Yeah. And so for a lot of people, I think the biggest challenge is being able to do something for themselves and recognizing that I do need help, and I do need to talk to someone, and I want to work on this. So I think a lot of it is, it doesn't come to light on how important mental health is to certain individuals until someone else says, you have a problem, you need to go to therapy, and it's someone that they love, someone that they care about, someone that they value their relationships in. But specifically as it relates to how when someone comes to therapy and they're like, I don't know, I don't have, I just don't feel like working on this right now. It's too much. I think that weight is really, really heavy, and we don't want to confront those fears because it hurts to. And I think that's what it is for a lot of people. We don't want to confront those demons. We don't want to unchain ourselves, right? We don't want to, because it hurts to. Because we understand that before we can get to the process of unchaining, we have to confront. And confronting looks scary. Yeah. And it's filled with fear, and it's filled with things that we don't know about ourselves. And I think that's a really scary process. It's a really scary place to be in. I'll share something personal with when it comes to my own, mental health journey, because I had to go through that process where I confronted my traumas, everything from domestic violence to sexual abuse to feelings of abandonment from family relationships and so forth. It was one of those things where it hurt to sit in a therapy session and tell my therapist that, I got pain and I don't want to deal with it. And so I would try to mask it with all these other things that I had going on at the time. And so it got to a point where she said, you know what, are you gonna really talk to me about this stuff at work, or you want to really deal with your shit? Wow. And I'm like, oh, girl, yes, tell me, baby. And so, we laughed, and she can definitely tell me those things, because I'm that kind of person. I'm, like, very straight up and honest. And so she had to get, like, lined up with me and say, hey, like, be for real right now. Like, come on now. It's time for you to confront your fears. It's time for you to confront your traumas. You can't run away from this anymore. And it wasn't until she pointed that out that I was like, you know what, I do. Because I see how much of an impact it's creating in my relationships with my daughter, with my partners, my romantic loves. Like, nothing was working. Wow. Because I was still grieving, and I was still that hurt little girl on the inside. And I would treat everyone that way. And my little girl would come out of me in situations where she didn't feel safe, and she felt triggered. And so healing that inner child is hard. It's really, really hard. But once you get to that point and where you're able to accept it, like I need to break her out of this, because she no longer wants to be in this space, and I no longer want to allow the inner child to keep coming out of me in situations where I don't feel safe anymore. And so being able to heal that inner child, it's really liberating.
Wow. That's a huge topic, actually, the inner child healing. I remember I read about that, and it's such an in-depth practice. I want to thank you for sharing that, because that's a big thing where everyone overlooks.
Yes.
Because you're still a child, but you're just taller.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a thought the other day that when I'm having the most fun, that's me in my core. I was able to fully unify and integrate that throughout my entire livelihood. So this is why I have fun all the time. Because when I was a young boy, I always wanted to have fun. I always wanted to run around and jump through those things. And let my mom lock that away, it put me in a space where I was. They used to call me like Mr. Robot in school because I didn't show any emotion to anybody.
Aww.
And I can laugh about it now, but then it was just straight cut to the point. Like I didn't want to hear what you're crying about. Like, what are you gonna do about it?
But can I ask you a question? Was that because your mom would tell you, "Don't cry"?
Of course.
Don't show feelings. Why are you crying now?
My mom would tell me, well, I'll have to go back. Every time my mom would yell at me, I always cried. And it's like, what are you crying for? I hate you.
Yeah.
And like I said, I locked my feelings away at that point. So it just got to a point where I didn't know what to feel.
Right.
And I just...
Because anytime you felt, someone told you, what are you feeling for? What are you crying for?
It's never gotten to that point. It was just, I was in self-preservation. Yeah. And since I was preserving, I couldn't give. So there's nothing I could have gave from that point. So it just put me in a weird spot where it was really hard to manage relationships. And even when I liked girls, it was really hard. Yeah. The emotional level was really small. I like you this
very
much.
small. Yes.
And it was such a interesting thing to see, because I will like them, but I will still have a bit of disdain for them, because I was scared, like, but what if she's like my mom a little bit? And then as I've dated women now, I'm always looking for that. Like, if I see a specific attitude or a pattern of things, I immediately auto reject, because I know long term that's not going to be good for us.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you pay attention to red flags, but you're afraid that the red flags, like those little small red flags, are going to turn into bigger ones.
Oh, of course. I always look for that. I would, because there was times where, like, oh, I'll let that go. And it blew up into a big situation where, damn, if I would have rejected a while ago, this will never happen to me. So I become very, very, very detailed when it comes to even my relationships, because I realize over time, if I'm going to invest in a person, it has to be within the lines of things I'm willing to tolerate and things that I've realized someone can grow out of.
Right, absolutely.
So I have hope for everybody, but there's a timeline where I want to see if someone's willing to do something over time. So I usually give people 6 months.
You put them on a timeline?
Everyone has a timeline.
Okay.
Because I realize I'm always growing. I'm always reading. Like
Absolutely.
The most recent book I just picked up was about I forgot the author, but the topic was intimacy in long-term relationships. And the reason I picked that book up was because there's times where I'm thinking, well, because sometimes it could get a little monotonous in relationships. You kind of do the same thing. Yeah. But maintaining desire through your relationship, like how does that work? How do you do that? Because sometimes for me, I get bored of people. And I realize, well, if I'm going to get bored over something, let's find a reason why I like this person in the first place.
Yeah.
Let's loop it and remember why I'm here in the first place. Because I saw this. I liked how that person talked. I liked their voice. I like how they wore something.
Rekindling the connection and the relationship.
And for me, I'm not in a relationship right now other than myself, but I'm learning all these things now because I've realized there's going to be a point in time where I'm going to need this skill set. There's going to be a point in time where even if I'm talking to someone that's had a long-term relationship, like, oh, yo, I read this book, read this book. So I like to be a reservoir for things. Mm-hmm. But I started to read that because I wanted to learn how to maintain desire over a period of time. Because the desire I realized is that's what the mysteriousness keeps someone there within a relationship. Like, oh, this person to do that? They never told me that. Like,
Yeah.
And it's actually a really cool concept because I've always heard about sexist marriages and people over when you start to lose like the sparking relationship, the desiring relationship, you start to drift apart.
Absolutely.
And then there's so much water there, it's hard to spark it again.
Right.
And that's what happens to me with people who don't grow. So the last lady I dated, my only notion was I wanted her to grow. And then she asked me to do different things. Like she wanted me to to call her more. She wanted me to be more compassionate, empathetic for different things. So I started to work on those and adapt to that, adapt to her. But then I wanted her to grow. I didn't see anything.
Right. So it was like you wanted me to do all of these things and pour into myself, but you're not willing to do the work yourself. Yeah. So how did you handle that? What was your approach?
It was a bit of a strange approach because the last night I saw her, she had just came back from Indonesia. She did a month-long yoga class to become a yoga instructor, and it was really interesting because I've been myself the entire time, but she said a lot of things that really stood out to me. And it was really interesting because I'm very playful, but she didn't like that I was playful. I was I'm very high energy, so you can't really hide that. And then she was in a place where she didn't have as much energy or near as much energy as I did. So we were complete opposites. And I was talking to my friend yesterday about this. And sometimes she didn't like how I delivered things or I said things. Like for an example was, I saw her fingers. They looked like a completely different texture, and I never seen it before. So I asked her, "Well, what happened to your fingers?" And immediately, she hit her fingers, and I believe that's a valid question.
Right.
But apparently not.
So she took it the wrong way. She internalized it in the way that you didn't really mean it to be. Okay.
And I'm very. I won't say I'm very. I like to make jokes, and then she didn't like I like to make jokes, because I like to diffuse situations with laughter and different things because a lot of things aren't really serious. I don't take a lot of things serious because it's not. If it's life or death, I understand, but if it's just like a lighthearted conversation or so on and so forth, there's no need to be serious.
Right.
So I'm very lighthearted when it comes to a lot of things, and she had a small problem with that because it seemed like I just was always playful and I wasn't really mature in certain aspects and so on and so forth. But we always have mature conversations. Absolutely. I always told her how I felt. If I didn't like it, I didn't like it. She liked that I told her no majority of the time. Well, if I'm not gonna do something, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that comes up a lot in situations where people find themselves with a partner and you're just not compatible. But there's two different layers to this topic right now. Number one is in the beginning you mentioned that for a long time what you were doing is you were kind of looking at people and recognizing those small red flags, and then you're like, all right, no, I'm good. And so there's a difference between identifying the red flags, but allowing that to determine, like not giving someone a chance, right? And then because if I give them a chance, although this is a red flag or an indicator that the relationship might not work, then really I'm allowing that small red flag to serve as a guard or a barrier of protection for myself in the event that they reject me or that, they make me feel some type of way that I don't feel comfortable with. And then the other part of that stood out to me is also in relationships when we feel like our partners and I are not compatible, then at what point do we decide, well, we're not in alignment. We have to go our separate ways because I can't be a person that I can't be the person you want me to be. I have to be myself, and you have to accept me for who I am and as I am, but it does not mean, don't misinterpret it for growth, because you can grow. And if someone's pushing you to grow in terms of, well, I want you to be more empathetic. Can you express your emotions more to me? This is what I value in relationships. I value when someone gives me that validation or when someone affirms me. I think these are great ways where we can push our partners to be a better version of themselves. But if you're asking someone not to be as playful, like you're kind of making or forcing someone to change their personalities. Yeah. And at that point, you have to recognize that this isn't serving me. We're not in alignment, and I can't change my core beliefs, my core values. I can't change my character for you or to conform to what you want out of me. Yeah. And so I can imagine that was like a big, big thing for you, right? Like you felt like she was asking you to do things that it just wasn't in your nature or in your character.
And it's really interesting you touched on that, because it got to a point where we were having a conversation, and just how, like you said, it just passed me, but it's almost the same structure, because we were talking, and it got to a point where I realized I can't provide the love you're looking for.
Wow.
And if I wasn't serious, I wouldn't have said that. But I realized patterns over time. Like she wanted that R&B kind of love, and I'm like, no. And I said no, because that's not who I am. That's not the person I am. I'm compassionate. I'm empathetic. I'm gonna listen to you. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna support you, so on and so forth. But that overbearingness, I'm not there for that. Yeah. I like equality when it comes to my relationships. Like I'm not gonna be like a helicopter person. Like, where are you going? Where are you like? I realize we're all individuals. We all have our lives. We all had lives before we met each other. Yeah. There's gonna be a bit of a different change with that center of resonance, but I'm still working on projects. So you're still doing what you're doing. Yeah. But no one's gonna impede what I'm gonna be working on.
So then those relationships is very important for us to be mindful of, right? When someone's continuously asking ourselves to step outside of our comfort zone, in terms of like, I want you to be this person because in my head, this is what my partner should be or should look like. And it kind of makes us feel, if we allow it to, like we're not enough. And if we allow it to get the best of us and we really don't value ourselves in the way that we should, we can really look at ourselves like, I'm not good enough for this person. And then it'll drag our self-esteem and our self-worth down if we allow it to. And so that's why it's so important that at the core, when we are starting relationships, we're working on ourselves so that no one can tell us, well, you're not good enough. And for us to not believe it also, because if someone says it long enough, we're going to start believing that you're not good enough for me. Something is wrong with you. You need to work on this. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in relationships like that a lot of the times. Yeah. And it doesn't feel good because it feels like you're asking so much out of me that I don't have it to give. And I keep trying and I keep trying. And if it's a person that's just not satisfied with you as a partner, it's never gonna be enough. Yeah. And that hurts.
And that's such an important topic to deal with, because you have to understand who you are from the beginning to understand if you can provide that person what they're looking for. Yeah. I remember when I first said that statement, it was groundbreaking because I know exactly who I am. I know exactly what I can provide, what I can provide. But if I just kind of went along with that, it would have been a perilous situation for me. Yeah. I would have redacted as a person. I wouldn't have been the same. Yeah. And I think it's very important as just anybody to really understand where are you at? What can you provide? and even being a man in society, like you're on this pedestal to provide and do
Yes.
a myriad of different things. But most men now, they don't even know who they are. It's hard to really corroborate identity with a persona
Oh,
when you don't even understand who you are as a person.
yeah.
And then a lot of guys, and you can talk about even adding clothing and jewelry back into it. That's their persona,
Yes.
and their identity's way over here, and there's no correlation.
Right. That's big.
And I'm like, I'm not a fashion guy. I'm a style guy. So it's all about you being uniqueness and
Right.
custom. Going out to specific, even when I go to fashion shows or even specific like art/fashion shows, you can always tell the person who's hiding behind their clothes, who's hiding behind their jewelry.
Yeah.
They're like, they're like the skunk in the party.
Yeah.
Like you can smell him, like, what's this guy doing here? Like he doesn't. And it may be a judgment call, but you can see who's real and who's not real.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because that mask is so evident that you have a mask on. You're not being genuine. You're not being true to yourselves. You can tell in conversations when someone is hiding behind their clothes or that mask that as we call it. And so going back to how it just feels like we just have to deal with our shit. Like we just have to. That's the bottom line. Being able to be self-aware and also being able to accept help when help is offered, or when you're looking for help, being able to and willing to take it.
And that's a big thing too, because always, I remember where that was a pain point for me as well. Accepting help or being willing to receive help. And I remember that was another program. Like, well, okay, I'm gonna specifically ask for help over the span of 3 months, and instead of just doing things, I still do things. If I could do myself, I'll do myself. If I need help, hey, can you help me with this? But it's not the notion of help, is how are you asking for help?
Yes.
And I realize it's almost the same way as a conflict. I won't say conflict avoidance, but conflict conflict avoidance. Like instead of saying, oh, can I talk to you right now? Instead of, oh, there's something I noticed here.
Right.
Or have you thought about this?
Yes.
So you're not implicating a huge ordeal. Like, oh, he's asking me, did I think about that? Like, oh, I don't know. So that person's not on their guard. Like, oh, how would you say that to me?
Right.
Because I remember when I had those conversations where like, oh, I didn't like when you did this and that, and then you get an argument. But now it's like, well, I noticed when you did this, it made me feel that way.
Yes. Yes.
Or
So using I statements.
yeah, or I realized when this happened, you did that.
Right.
And it's a more integral way of having those conversations, and it's more collaborative instead of disassociative.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because the truth is that when you approach people with you statements like you did this and you made me feel this way and you violated me, or it's not going to be a productive conversation. So being able to share with someone, you made me feel this, I feel this way when you did this. It gives it more so of an approach where now you're sharing how you feel. And the attention is not so much on what the other person did, and their defense isn't going to go up, because now you're coming from a place, well, this is how I feel. This is me. I'm not speaking for you. And you don't have to defend your position. You don't have to have a guard up because I'm attacking your character. But more so, I'm letting you know how your actions made me feel. And so I love that you are able to reword that phrase and say, you know what, I felt this way, or I noticed that when you did this, I just want to let you know that this is how it made me feel. And I always look at it from a place of be curious, not judgmental.
Yes.
So when you're trying to resolve situations, especially in relationships, you come from a place of curiosity. Did you notice that X, Y, and Z? And I just want you to know that this is how this made me feel when you responded in this way. And it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of curiosity. Help me understand how we can get to a place where we can, communicate better, Or, what help me understand, what did I say that triggered you this way? It's a collaborative approach. It's not like, we have to realize that, especially in relationships, we're a team. Like, we need to work together as a team to be able to communicate. The problem is the problem. You and I are not the problem.
Yes.
And so once we understand that we're both individuals trying to resolve a problem and target a problem, then it takes the defense mechanism out of it. And I don't have to have a guard up with my significant other or within my friendships or family relationships, because now we understand that there's an issue that we're trying to resolve, and that you or me are not the issue. We're trying to resolve the issue and the problem, and it starts with coming from a place of curiosity versus judgment.
Wow. That's a very important point, because the curiosity versus judgment thing, because judgment, it just brings up the wall. The curiosity is like, oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And even in the book, she talked about a certain point of being curious about your partner. Like the initial things that you saw that really start to make your mind like, this person, like how they interact with that person is very cool, like very like enchanting, so on and so forth. And like over time, curiosity also helps you a bit more, because at that point, you're not labeling things. It's more of a discovery.
Right.
Like you're always in a discovery mode.
Yeah.
Even being a photographer, I look at the world differently. Because every time I look at an angle, I look at perspective, I'm looking at colors, everything is a new discovery. And I believe life in a curious way, it makes it less serious.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, I'm going to go back a little bit. There's a foundation I made for myself called traffic practice. The notion of that practice is, if you want to learn self-control, you want to learn how to release control, you want to learn how to be okay with just being okay within your circumstance, you practice all that while driving. And the biggest thing behind it is, when you're driving, you're the only person that commands that one vehicle.
That's right.
Driving is a collaborative sport if people don't think about it in that aspect. And so a lot of people are not on your team.
Right.
So you have to be defensive, you have to be curious, you have to be adaptable, and you have to be very, very attentive. And I remember when I was driving to work, Miami traffic is terrible, especially in the morning. And people were coming and cutting in front of you. People were driving slow. People are just all stopping when there's no one in front of them. And I'm like, why am I getting mad about this? I'm just driving the coupe. There's nothing else I could do.
Right.
So now, ever since I instilled the practice, I also made a podcast episode about it, because it's a very strong way to develop that ability when you're in your car. And now, whatever I can control, I'm going to do it. If I can't, I'm going to relax. I'll put some nice tunes on. Absolutely. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see the notion of road rage, the ideology of extreme anger behind the wheel. Because I remember my mom, she would always, like, if people weren't going as fast as she wanted them to go, which is not really possible, she would honk at them, and then all this kind of stuff. But all you gotta do is go around. So now I'm at the point where if someone's taking a long time, I'm gonna go around. I'm not gonna honk at you.
Yeah.
My car is in mid range of in fast acceleration, so I'm gonna press the gas. I'm gonna get around you. We're gonna have a great time.
Right.
And the reason I bring it up is because the notion of control is such a big idea for people. Like, they believe they could control everything, but when you're in your car, you only control one thing. And let's talk about being a passenger in someone's car.
Yeah.
You drop all control there.
Right.
So when I was teaching my brother how to drive, that was a huge episode. Because I was teaching him, because what I did for my brother was a little different from what most people do. Because I grew up with my godmother, Debbie. She got me a racing pedal set with the steering wheel and the pedals. So I played racing games for hours. So my technique comes from that. But for my brother, I had him do a race. And he couldn't until he took a break, until he got first place in that race, he wasn't ready to drive a car.
Oh, wow.
Because it teaches you pedal control, it teaches you input
Absolutely.
skills,
Yes.
it teaches you where to look on the road so you know how to make that turn before
Yes.
you get there. It's a very intensive skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So now, when he started to drive, all we have to do now is input in how you look at your mirrors and your depth perception between you and when you get to a certain point, and
Right.
like how big your car is. But looking at that, when I'm in the passenger seat, all I can do is talk. I can't press the pedal for him. I can't turn the wheel for him. You can't do anything.
Right, right.
You're trusting the pilot of the
Yes.
vehicle.
Yeah.
But I already had the practice instilled, so I was really
It
too
was
worried.
easier for you.
Yeah, I was really too worried. I was like, but earlier when I was in other people's cars and they didn't brake how I broke because I braked always early, I would be like, I would tense up. But now it's a point of, well, if I die, I die. and as dark as it may seem, you have to trust that person.
Absolutely.
When you're in the passenger seat or you're in the back seat,
Oh, yeah.
you can't do anything. So now, like, well, all right, I guess it was nice doing it.
Yeah, yeah. But it's very similar to life, right? When we are drivers of this body and this life, we don't have control over people and what they do, how they treat us, how they make us feel. We only have control over our feelings, our bodies, our perceptions of reality, our perceptions on what people say to us. That's all we can control. And so a lot of times we allow people to be the drivers of our own bodies and our own lives, and then we wonder why we're struggling.
I'm gonna need you to repeat that one more time.
Yeah, sometimes we allow people to be the drivers of our own lives, our own bodies, our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts. And at that point, we lose all control. But I think we just gave them too much power. We didn't really lose the control. We just gave them the power. We chose to allow them to come into our lives and dominate. But it just starts with our core beliefs, our core systems, and how much we pour into ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, so that we are the drivers of our lives and our minds and our health.
When did you realize that?
So for me, I was in a really, really dark place. At 16, I was pregnant. And at 17, well, let me go back a little bit. At 16, I was pregnant. I was literally in a group home, and I was in a group home filled with girls. And I had just after I gave birth, I lost my son. So here I am, 16 and pregnant in a group home with a bunch of other girls. And they ended up breaking I had a little memory box. They broke the memory box in pieces and took out his little hair that I took with me. It was the only thing I had from the hospital, right? And so they ended up taking it and destroying it, tearing it up to pieces, putting it all over the place. And so I lost it. I lost my shit. And I vowed from that day, I'm going to make everyone's life a living hell here. And so my struggle with mental health at that time was real. Like, I was grieving. I was 16. I'm in I'm in a group home in foster care with a bunch of strangers. I didn't feel good. Emotionally, mentally, I didn't feel good at all. And so I realized that day, I'm like, why am I allowing these people to get the best of me? Like, I'm trying to grieve. I'm in pain. I'm hurt. And here I am allowing them to get the best of me. And granted, they did some things that really would hurt anyone, because it was just so down low. But it wasn't until I had that instance where I'm like, I'm giving you too much power. And for me, it was letting go of the idea that you have control over how I feel. You have control over my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions. And I started pouring into myself once I got that understanding that you don't determine how I feel. I'm the driver of my life. I'm the driver of my mind and my thoughts. And I had to pour into myself. I started going to therapy. So I realized I can't do it alone. And so, it wasn't until I got to that point where I hit a wall, or I felt like I hit a wall, and I was really, really, really down and depressed. And that's when I started pouring into me again and taking control back over my life and not allowing people's emotions or how they feel about me get the best of me. So.
Wow. That's amazing, Kat.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
That's a skill. It's a very rare skill.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to get to that point. Sadly, for a lot of us, it's not until we're at our breaking point that we realize I don't want to feel this way anymore. But I'm here to encourage you all that it doesn't have to get to the breaking point. Once we start recognizing our triggers, once we start recognizing and gaining that self-awareness on the things that need to be worked on, we can start addressing it. And it's not an easy road, but we really have to do an assessment over the quality of our lives and decide, is this really how I want to continue? Do I really want to wake up every day and feel bad? Do I really want to wake up every day and drag myself out of bed and not have the motivation to go through the day? Or even, getting out of bed, it takes a lot out of me, or it takes everything out of me. And, making that assessment and realizing that goodness does await me because I deserve it. I am worthy of a happy life, whatever happiness means to you. I am worthy of deserving love and peace and grace into my life and into my space. Once you realize how worthy you are to receive those things and know that it can come and it will come, but you have to open your doors to being able to receive it. That is the only way that you're going to welcome it.
Yeah.
Because I can say I want peace of mind. I can say I want happiness. I can say I want joy. I can say I want all these things. But are you ready to receive those things? Did you open the doors to receive it?
Yeah.
Or are you keeping the door shut because you're too afraid to releasing the pain and the traumas? And so you have to be ready to receive. And so that little girl that was 16 in a group home, I don't think she was ready to receive at the time, but it wasn't until she was at her breaking point where she said, you know what, I need to open my heart because I don't want to go through life this way.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing, Kat. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Wow. I think when I got to that point when it was definitely after I had ended a relationship and I had a hard time really understanding what happened, and it was completely that I just let the person run over me. And I got to a point where I just realized, you know what, if I'm gonna I gotta stand up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a plan for 6 months where I learned how to say no.
I love that.
There's a quote that I live by now. It says, before you say yes, make sure you're not saying no to yourself.
Yes.
So with that now, it put me in a point where I'm ready to say no at any time. But I'm always gonna think, well, okay, do we want to do this? And if it's no from both sides, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I think the power of no is such a strong thing, because I remember when I didn't say it because I wanted to be liked, I wanted to be, around the people.
Yeah. You wanted to people please.
That was a horrible thing I went through as well. But that's been buried a long time ago. It's not coming back anytime soon.
Yeah.
Because it puts you in a very strange place of acceptance that you accept everything else except yourself. And I was like, no, we can't do that anymore. And ever since I became best friends with no, I'm ready to stay home at any point.
Yeah.
I'm ready to not do anything.
Yeah.
Because if I want to go somewhere, if I want to do it, I got to be unified with my answer.
Absolutely. It has to make you feel good. You have to be okay with that decision. And being a yes person or being a people pleaser, I think is one of the worst things that we can do to ourselves, because now it no longer becomes about what I want and what makes me feel good and what I feel comfortable doing, but more so what everyone else wants me to do.
Yeah.
And we lose our identities in being people pleasers, because we learn and we conform to just looking at life from a perspective of my needs don't matter. And somewhere along the line, someone made me feel like my needs and wants did not matter, and I started to believe them. And so the power of no, like you said, it's so important to finally come to get to a point where I'm not people pleasing because I don't care that if I say no, you're not going to like me anymore. And that's really what it ties down to. When we people please, it's that fear that people are going to reject us or that they're going to abandon us because we're not doing the things that they want us to. And it's okay to say no. Say no as often as you need to. And so one of the things that I have to do sometimes, because I'm such a helper at heart and it makes me feel good, that sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, if I say no, like, am I really losing something by saying no? Like, and so I have this constant battle with myself because I love helping, but I do place myself in situations where I help to the point where I'm putting myself in an uncomfortable situation. Yeah. And it doesn't feel good because I'm shortchanging myself.
Yeah.
And so I started checking in with myself, like, before I say yes. Hey, give me a moment to think about this.
Yeah.
Before naturally I would just say, oh yeah. And then I'd be like, shit, how am I going to figure this out? Like, I just agreed to doing something. And I know I didn't even take time to assess how it made me feel, whether I really wanted to do it or not. And so I learned, and this is how I had to learn slowly, was I had to check in, like, hey, give me some time to think about it. I'll get back to you. And you can take 20 minutes. You can take a day.
Yeah.
And say, I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Versus just agreeing and saying, yeah, sure. You know? And so once I started developing that habit of checking in with myself, how does this make me feel? If I say yes, am I saying no to me?
Yeah.
Am I putting my needs second or last to try to accommodate someone else's? Because when we think about it, while we're saying yes to something that we really don't want to say yes to, we're mad and we're upset and we're angry at ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good. And I'm sure that a lot of us can relate when we've said yes to certain things or people, and then we're in the process of like, God, why did I agree to this? How am I gonna do this? Like, and then we mad at the person, we're mad at ourselves, and 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna give us the appreciation that we were looking for. They're not, because you didn't want to do it in the first place. So it doesn't matter what they say or how much praise you get. None of that's going to matter to you. So I love what you said in terms of being able to say no, because it means saying yes to you.
Yeah. And we could also jump into boundaries with that too, because I remember I read the book by Dr. I think John Townsend, and I'm like, whoa, you could do that? Because it was a foreign concept to me at that point of what a boundary is. Some of my boundaries are rock solid.
Ooh.
And I remember, probably 2 or 3 women told me, like, Quinn, your boundaries are so strong. But, like, do you bend it? It depends what it is.
Yeah.
But rock solid. Because I went through so much trial and error to form what I have now. Yeah. For me to even kind of, like, open to break, it can happen.
Absolutely.
Like, what are some examples that even with clients or even with like family members that you had to have like a really strong boundary between?
So I see a lot of issues with boundaries, specifically as it relates to like our family boundaries and specifically towards like our parents. So a lot of times we have to remember like our parents still kind of look at us like their children, or we are their children, but they look at us like that little girl or that little boy. And so sometimes telling our parents no is really, really hard. And so not to get too detailed, but I had a client once, and her mom would always, try to make her do certain things. Like she'll keep the copy of the car key, or she'll keep, hey, do this. And so because she lived with her mom, she didn't know how to tell her mom no. And so it was, and so as an adult, she started telling her mom no because she realized this isn't making me feel good. So she started reinforcing her boundaries, like, Mom, I'm not going to do this because it doesn't make me feel good, or I have to work and I can't go pick up your medication while you're just in bed, like not doing anything. Like, I have to put myself first. And her mom didn't know how to accept that because she's like, whoa, you're telling me no? Like, what do you mean no? And so I do see it a lot in those family relationships where it's really, really hard to stand up to our parents. It's hard to stand up to our family members. But I say look at your boundaries in a way where how does it make me feel when people cross my boundaries? Like, because if we allow people to overstep or to deter us from our boundaries, then ultimately it's not going to make us feel good. It's going to feel like we're constantly getting shortchanged.
Yeah.
And when setting boundaries, definitely check in with yourself. What are my values? What do I want? How do I want to be treated? What will I not stand for? What are certain things that are just absolutely non-negotiables in terms of how people treat me or what people do to me or what people say to me? And really reflect on those things that tie into who you are as a person, what you want to stand for, and how you want other people to treat you. And if it violates any of those things or that idea of what really means the most to you, then these are people that are overstepping your boundaries, and you need to continuously reinforce them and remind them, like, no, you are not going to speak to me this way because I have boundaries in place.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And even just the aspect of understanding what the boundary is and actually working on putting it in place. Because a lot of times where people start to put it in place, they get the kickback, they all make it go back to the other side. Because they get scared, like, oh, it's not working. You didn't commit. I remember even for my mom, I had to tell her no for a lot of things. And in the beginning, she'll give me a look. I said, no, I can't do that. I won't be able to do that this time. And I also, if I could do it at a different time, in a different time frame, I would have given her the option. But initially, I was like, no, I wouldn't be able to do this at this time. I couldn't do it at this time.
Ooh,
So
I like that.
If you're able to move it or able to do it at a different time,
Right.
but still within the not saying no to yourself, I mean it's still very doable. But I really seen people run away with just, oh, Quinn, can you do this? Oh yeah, definitely. And especially even at work, boundaries in the workplace is such a strong thing as well, because you break that once, it's a floodgate you're gonna get. So now I always tell people I don't do anyone favors anymore. Yeah. Because then they get like, oh, Quinn, can you do this? Can you do that? No. and then they're gonna like, and then because even now at the current job I'm at now, like, Quinn, you're saying no. I'm like, yeah, I don't do favors. If you don't put in the request,
that's right.
I'm not gonna help you. Yeah. And then they look at me when I said that, I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna help you. Put the request in. And the notion is, if there's no request, there's no help.
That's right.
So now at the point where sometimes they don't do it because they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to help them regardless. But then...
I love that. Reinforcing your boundaries. That's right.
Of course. And now when some people, I'll put a ticket in. And then they get the help they need. But I remember at even previous jobs, I was always doing the most to help people. And then you become the guy. Yeah. Like, you never want to be the guy. Right. You never want to be the guy or the girl that, oh, I can always depend on you. I won't be dependable, but not to an extreme grandeur where they're like, oh, can you help me with all these things? Definitely not.
Right. You want to be dependable, not an enabler. There's a difference. Yeah. When you depend on someone, it's more so like, now I know that I can come to them with a problem and that they're going to help me resolve it. They're going to help me figure it out, versus when you're enabling someone, like, they need to do this. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how I feel, I'm going to enable that behavior. I'm going to get them through it no matter what, even if I know that they really need to start learning from their behaviors, start learning from their experiences, and I can't do the work for you. Exactly. So enabling behavior or someone depending on you are two different things. Yeah.
And that's a big distinction to even remember, because sometimes if you don't pay attention, it'll easily blend, and then you're gonna mix both. And like, wait, I thought I was enabling. I thought I told them I was gonna do it, but I did it anyways. Yeah. And then you have to be very, very stringent about that, because, like I said, you do it once, the floodgates start to open.
Absolutely. And I see it a lot in addictions. So like when because I specialize in addictions as well. And so I see it a lot when we have our family members who really, really struggle with addictions, and then we know that they come back and they're asking for money and they want just, a little something to get them through to their next high. And so sometimes I've seen family members who say yes because it hurts seeing them go through the withdrawals, or it hurts seeing them go through this really dark place where they're like, I don't know what else to do. And so being able to realize like you can help someone without enabling them. And that's the biggest thing, is realizing I can help you, but I don't have to do it every time. Because once you start, it becomes a habit. And now I'm not being dependable anymore. Now I'm enabling your behaviors. I'm enabling you coming to me constantly and asking me for help. You're not figuring it out for yourself because I'm not giving you an opportunity to fall. Yeah. I'm trying to be there to pick you up every single time. Yeah. And so when we look at our relationships, or the people that come to us for help, we have to really recognize, especially if it's things that are coming to us as repetition. Well, how many more times can I save you? And if it happens more than once, that I need to look within. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, what is this? What do I need to learn from this? And so we need to start reinforcing our boundaries, as we spoke on, because we recognize this doesn't make me feel good. And I feel like anytime that I help you, you either don't appreciate it, or you come back and I keep finding myself in the same position, or you keep finding yourself in that same predicament. And so I think it is very important to be able to recognize when we're trying to be dependent, or we want people to look at us as dependent, like dependable rather, or enablers.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. The family thing is, especially with the addiction, it's a big deal, because majority of enabling, it happens to that. Because a lot of people, like, they don't. I know I've seen withdrawal symptoms, and they're not the greatest things to go through.
No, you have to go through.
You have to go through that journey to come out the other side.
Yeah.
Because then once you come across, and you stay across, your whole life changes.
Yeah, for sure.
Because even in my family, I've seen a lot of alcoholism, and I've seen where family members, I'm glad to have, even when all my family's overseas, I'm glad to see that they are a big group, so they're always standing there, they're standing in the gap for each other, and they help pull each other through. Yeah. I wish I had that here, but I had to kind of make it for myself, but that's a whole skill set on its own. But enabling is such a strong thing, because even in a societal note, there's a lot of societal enabling, which is a big case.
Oh yeah.
Which is where people always, the following. Anytime there's a big news, there's always there's bandwagoning. A lot of people don't think for themselves, which is creates another lack of identity, because whatever you see, you follow. Absolutely. And it's really sad to see that there's a lack of free thinking, I was supposed to call it, because whatever's there's no question, like, oh, this is true. Oh, this happened. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
There's no, like, why did that happen, though?
Right.
Or did someone do something for this to happen? Or, like, there's no question. There's no research. There's a lack of that now, because when you become a free thinker in such a world we're in now, why are you questioning that as bad? Yeah. Glenn, this is your perspective. That's not my perspective. Absolutely. So how am I going to just automatically put a label for something I have no idea what it's about? So it's a really hard thing to work through, but then definitely when you're able to actually understand and be aware of it and enforce strong boundaries around it, it's definitely a completely different person you become. But now we're going to talk about the style section of the show.
Oh, exciting.
So I've seen you in different arenas, different places. You always have colors, great accessories.
Oh, thank you.
Break down, how did you evolve your style to how it got to this point?
Ooh, that's a great question. I feel like style speaks to my individuality as a person. So when I do dress up, I love things that pop. I love colors. I definitely love different, mixing different textures and things like that. I always go for like very classy or classic, and with a mix of professionalism. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to feel a little sexy here and there, so I'll add like a long V-neck top like this one, where it's like, okay, I feel I feel professional, but I also feel sexy and I feel empowered. And so it really just depends on how I feel. Like I dress based on how I feel. So today, this is how I felt, and that's what I decided to do.
One of the big things that really caught my eye is the earrings. When would you put those earrings on?
Oh my gosh! I'm sorry. What was your question?
When made you put those earrings on?
When? What made me?
Yeah.
I think my outfit needed like a pop of color. So originally I was gonna go with gold, but I'm like,
Ooh.
I don't know. I think my blazer has a little bit more of like that gold look. So I'm like, I need something that is gonna stand out, not mix in with my blazer. And so I chose the green earrings because I felt like it would have given the outfit a pop of color. And my pants are kind of green, so I kind of was like, okay, let me do that. And yeah.
Yeah, so you have a lot of earth tones on.
Yes, I love earth tones. I think it goes well with like my complexion and the fact that I love natural tones and yeah, it's.
You said something very, very important there, which is it goes with your skin tone. It contrasts your skin tone. That's a topic that goes over a lot of people's heads because a lot of people, it's all the notion of it's like the shiny thing syndrome. Ooh, this is nice, I want it. But then you put it on, and it looks terrible.
Yeah.
Or the fit's not good, or something's not good about it. And when I see someone that consistently over time that they piece together things, that those look eloquent or look well put together, I find it very attractive because it shows there's a level of understanding of how to dress yourself.
Yeah.
Because as weird as it may seem, that's a very important skill. One of the things I teach is interchangeability. Does your closet or does your wardrobe represent who you are as a person?
Right.
When you go in your closet, can someone tell, oh, Quinn loves this is definitely Quinn's look, or this is definitely Katherine's look, by what they see and know how you express yourself. I think self-expression when it comes to clothes, it's a very strong line to cross because it could be anything. And also nothing at the same time.
Right.
Because you could be someone who just wears whatever you see the next guy wear, or it could be someone that completely puts something together instead of just grab this, I'm going to just put this on because I saw this was popular. I don't do mainstream things. I don't follow trends. I make my own trends. Because then at that point, since it's my own wave, I'm not following anybody. I'm easily identifiable in the crowd. Yeah. Instead of, is that cool over there?
Right.
Like, so in terms of like how you dressed and how your style represents yourself, how do people interact with you based on how your style is?
I think it's a nice conversation opener, like when someone likes the way that you're dressed or your earrings. Like, hey, I love your earrings. Where'd you get them from? So I love the fact that sometimes that individuality that your style can provide you with can open up those conversations with strangers and people that you otherwise would not have spoken to had you not had this on. It's a beautiful thing, really, because sometimes people are afraid to come up to you, a stranger, and speak. We're like, what would I say? Like, I really want to, but I don't know what to say. And so being able to have that like conversation piece, I think is really nice, and it does open the doors. As it relates to style or something so simple like, oh, where'd you get your earrings, or where'd you get, I love your hair, like whatever it is. So I love that it can serve as that conversation piece for most people. Yeah.
And it's a very good point too, because I went to an event last night and I think 4 people came up to me to ask me about my outfit. And I mean, I get that pretty often.
Of course.
Because I'm always wearing something succinct and pretty different. But I remember when I first started really putting things together and I didn't know how to receive compliments, it was very awkward.
Yeah.
And then people were like, oh my, I love your outfit. Oh, thank you. And because I remember it's like, someone told me, Quinn, you have to learn how to receive compliments. Receiving compliments is something very strange if you're not used to getting compliments. Or if you grew up in a household where it was all hate and not really loving words, you have to readapt and learn, like, well, someone send something nice about me, like, oh, thank you.
Like, that's weird. Like, yeah, because it feels different. It feels off. I think the biggest thing when we're not used to receiving compliments is just saying thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be that person when people would compliment me on, oh, you look pretty. I'd be like, oh, I do? You know, like yeah, I would second guess myself. And I think a lot of us, we do that, especially if we're not in tune with ourselves or we don't really see our sense of worth. It's hard for us to be able to accept those compliments because we question, well, how genuine are these compliments? Are you really saying it to be nice, or this is how you really feel?
Yeah.
But take it. It's okay to say thank you. Thank you. You know, you look great, Quinn. Thank you.
Thank you.
You do as well. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
say thank you. Start with just a simple thank you versus, oh, you're just saying that, or, you know, oh, stop. Just stop. Oh, no, say thank you. It's okay to receive.
Yeah. Yeah, that beginning part, I remember I read, learn to say thank you. Like, thank you. And then I'll be like, oh, thank you so much. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, thank you so much for that. Like, oh, I see you have something cool as well. So if
Yeah.
someone has something cool, I'm gonna recognize
Give
it. But
it a
sometimes
compliment back.
they don't have anything cool. So I just have to say thank you so much. And it's kind of like, ask them
Yes.
something about themselves. So it's a bit of a give and take. But now it's just the more comments you have, the easier it becomes. Because, I mean, it's been a few years, so I can be a huge egomaniac. Like, oh, of course, I'm always dressed well. But it's just being empathetic and compassionate. Like, yes, thank you so much. Thank you for that compliment. And now it's just, you just breathe more life into people because they see, like, wow, he really sat and he thanked me for telling me. He thanked me for that. Do you have any final thoughts of what you want to leave with the people as far as being an amazing mental health advocate and, of course, a stylish lady?
I do want to say, you know, as it relates to our feelings of self-worth and how we look at ourselves, how we value ourselves, it's so much more than the clothes that we wear and the layers that we put on. And so it's okay to value yourself. It's okay to, you know, look deep within and heal some of those wounds that you've been trying to cover up with a Band-Aid for so long. And the layers can't help you. You know, the clothes can't help you. It can make you feel good temporarily, but we really need to heal and work on those wounds, and instead of just putting a Band-Aid over it and expecting them to heal themselves. And so I do want to say, if you need help, reach out for help. It's okay to say, sometimes I'm not okay. I need support. And tell people, be okay with telling people how they can support you. Hey, I just need a listening ear. I just need you to let me vent right now. I just need a hug, or I just need someone to talk to. Be okay with asking for help when you need it and as you see fit. But it starts with you being able to look within so that you don't have to be without. And don't be afraid to ask when you need it.
Don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. That's it. See you guys next time.
Thank you.